Jersey Pawn.
Hi, and welcome to our next edition of the Jersey Pawn podcast and reality show. I'm Keith Sandlands. I'm here with Bernard Ciangoli, owner and founder of Pawndingo Pawn Shop, and I'm here with Justin Bronner, who's a history teacher from the local New Jersey public schools. And today on our episode, what we want to talk about is this intersection of entertainment and education. And we think it's really important. We think it's really, obviously, education, as we all know, is extremely important to society, to having a really positive life and being empowered and really doing good things for society. But what we've been finding is that education, it's kind of friction, you know, it's kind of like kids eating your vegetables, you know, you don't really generally want to do it, but all of a sudden it was put like chocolate, hey, now all of a sudden you're learning and this tastes really good, you know? So we kind of want to talk about this concept of edutainment, you know, or entercation, you know, the jam between those two. And Bernie is a historian. He said to me earlier that, you know, if he didn't do this and what he did, he would be a history teacher. And Justin is a history teacher. So what we want to do, we want to kind of express right now, is how we can make learning fun and just do it by talking about things that are right in front of us and kind of how they have manifested here right in front of us from history. And this is kind of how we're going to bring history to life. And this is going to be something that's going to be tied into our Jersey Pawn reality show. So one of the things that we have in front of us right now is we have the text sketch.
Well, let me try to jump in over
here.
What we're doing.
Yeah.
What we have here in front of us is a couple of things we're going to talk about today. And not to belabor the subject, but back in the 80s, I developed a device called the Light Pen that worked on the CRT. You see a podcast, I talk about it. Actually, it was a pen device hooked up to an Atari or Commodore computer, and you can actually draw on the screen with the pen. If you look at a Kickstarter program, you'll see a little bit about it, how it interacted with education, and it's almost a kind right now to the iPad. You see kids today on their iPad doing different things, games and so on. This was similar 30 some odd years ago, but it was the beginning of computing, and it worked with a CRT, a computer, and a piece of software. Software back then was a little different than you see today. It's a floppy disk. Back then, now we have a lot more interesting devices, and you had an external hard drive. This was the box that it was sold. I sold them through Toys R Us. I sold 60,000 units the first Christmas that it came out. It was basically endorsed by Commodore and Atari at that time. It's a long story about Apple. We had an Apple device. I don't want to go into it again, but you'll see it other places. So education is very important. From the beginning of computing till today, it became more and more of a learning device. Today, the iPad and other computing devices and tablets are used widely in the teaching field. And I would say Justin can tell us a little more about that.
iPads are great use of technology. Always in the classroom, you want to develop skills and resources for the student to succeed. You always want to make them engaged in their work, and sometimes people say you either have a great history teacher or you had a boring history teacher, and there's really no. I'll be honest with you, there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm back to school now. You always hear that. Well, I had a terrible history teacher, and they always remember the terrible ones, not the great ones, except a special few. And for me, technology plays an important role in everything that I do. Every lesson has to look up the facts. You have to know the minutia. You have to make them engage. You have to know not just the material, but you have to know what do they want to know? What do they want to do with it? If they want to go, for instance, we learned about women's rights and the suffrage movement, but we learned about how women able to learn more about more rights and how they are able to own property, how they're able to get their vote, the 19th Amendment, and also about jobs. And one of the students wants to do in the fashion, and then we learned all about different types of bags, Michael Kors, Coach, Gucci. I had no idea any of these brands, and I'm being informed, and that's all because of technology.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was thinking is a great way to steer the conversation, we were talking about this earlier, is Justin mentioned how important technology is in the classroom. And one of the things that we could do right now to really talk about it is let's talk about, we have this device in front of us. Let's talk about when you were developing this device. Is 1982 is the year, right? And you said that the only thing that was out there was was it a regular MacBook? Not MacBook, but a regular Mac, right? Or,
there was nothing.
There was nothing. So when Bernie started out, just to clarify this for everybody, when Bernie started out,
joystick was basically
there was nothing, you know. So
let me expand that.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, at that time, you had a joystick. You had electronic games. Your input device was a joystick, or it was your computer. If you used a computer, up, down, whatever, you couldn't interact. And what the idea and the concept that we developed at that time, which is pretty good when you talk about education, was computer literacy. And that was one of the buzzwords that I used in a lot of my works and paperworks and advertising. Computer literacy. It allowed people to interact with the computer more as far as a human-machine interface. Again, with the pen, you're able to now do stuff on the screen, either draw or to pick something. Early software that we developed was things such as, first one was Paint and Sketch, allowed you to draw and color it in. Then it was alphabet soup, we called it, where you could now, you'd have letters come on a screen, you'd move it, you'd click on, and move it over to the letter. Letter A, you have a whole bunch of letters. Shape and colors, different colors. The child can now just point to blue, and you see blue, and you pick blue, and bing, very interesting. Now, talk about early use of this, and a very novel, got a lot of accolades on it, we did a lot of good work. I had a customer, Dade County in Florida. This is something you guys haven't heard about before either. A lady came to me, she was a special education teacher, and she worked with autistic children, and it's severely, physically, mentally challenged, I should say, children. To the point where these children weren't able to do anything with a computer. They knew nothing about a computer. They couldn't write. They were just totally physically challenged. They actually took this pen, put it in their mouth, and they were interacting with the screen as they moved certain things and touched. And she told me, and I went down to see these children. They were unbelievable. They were to a point where she said that they made a total 180-degree phase shift from being introverted to when they finally were able to use the computer like other people could using this pen. Their eyes would light up. They were even starting to talk and interact with the teacher. It was unbelievable. I do have some testimonials on that I have to find. You know, it's a long time ago, 30 years ago. My paperwork has moved 1,000 times, and I've been in several businesses. But that was a very unique time, again, tying into education. I dropped it on you now because I just thought of it again. It really worked well. We had many of these children that really, they couldn't even do anything with a computer. But when they saw colors change, by them being able, some of them were able to do it with their hands, but then the ones that were totally paralyzed even, they would put it in their mouth. She was like, totally, she called me up and she said, I want to have you come down here. I want to give you a doctorate from my college. I never got it, by the way. It was unbelievable. So the educational part is very important. So we're talking about, as Justin is saying, the interface of technology and education today is very important. I think things have changed. Students today, and even children, I look at my own grandchild, he's 3 years old, when he was 3 years old, he had an iPad. He's playing the iPad. And these children are becoming very aware of their surroundings. I think in the old days we didn't have that. All we had was TV. When I grew up was TV. You watch TV, just watch what was going on. Now the interaction, again, the human and the machine interface, which has happened over time, has become very big with education. So as education continues to develop, I think Justin would say that we would really have a lot of opportunities here to educate these children. Because right now, there's other forces that are amok at this point that children don't seem to be grasping a lot. So maybe as they move forward with this iPad type device or other types of devices, using technology could be very interesting. I think you can make this more types of stuff. Some of your experiences.
Says iPads, you can usually use books on there. So you have your own textbook on there. So instead of spending close to a few $1,000s every few years to get new textbooks, you have an iPad and you just pay the fee, whatever it might be. I'm not too sure off the top of my head, and it's a few $100s, and that will cover you for 4 or 5 years, and everything's online now. You can take online quizzes, online tests, and for anyone in education, or not just in education, when we're in college these days, a lot of courses, they're online.
The problem years ago, even going back 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, I would say, there wasn't enough memory to store this data. Now, as you have this massive data, you can store a lot of information. I mean, you think about another little experience that I've had. I grew up, most of you people today under 30 are growing up with the computer. However, when I was young, 12, 13 years old. The only way for me to get information was from an Encyclopedia Britannica. My aunt gave me an old Encyclopedia Britannica. I think it was dated 1942 or something. And I read every one of the 15 books, and that's how I got my knowledge about the world and a lot of things, background knowledge. So today you find it easily. You can easily go to Google and you can look something up instantly. The database will tell you what's going on. Not to say I was an innovator, because I never got that far. I did think in my mind that if computers ever got to the point where they were powerful enough, I called it electronic encyclopedia would probably happen. And vis-a-vis Google, that has happened.
That's that's Google, that's Wikipedia, that's what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And it just makes it quicker. I mean, like, think about Bernie doing this process with, manually. You go to the book, you need, you have to flip the pages, and then if all of a sudden you're reading something and you're like, oh wow, now I want to, in this sentence, I want to research what that word is or what this situation was, I have to go open another book, or I have to flip to that part of the book. Yeah. I mean, now Wikipedia, as long as you just click through and then open a new tab, So it's just like we're at this age. We're at this age.
I think there'll be another leap of technology down the road. Where it's going to be, I don't know. Like I said, I've been behind the curve. I was pretty much up on things in the 80s and 90s, and then technology kind of jumped to the stratosphere. But some of the thinking also was, when I was thinking about that, lookup tables. My buzzword at that time was lookup tables, where my thought was that you can go with a pen and scan down a list of items, okay, and click onto it. But there wasn't enough memory in data bank. Where, of course, guys like Larry Page from Google, they're billionaires now because they were able to bring that new technology to the forefront. I got myself a little sidestepped to other things. I got into networking, got into 3D displays. I got a patent on 3D imaging system. Also using primitive computers. That patent ran out, but it wasn't practical. That's for another segment.
Okay.
Which might be
and sorry. So 1 second. So Bernie, you said you have patents. You were an inventor, right? Mm-hmm. What I want to talk about, and this is what's interesting with Bernie and Justin, particularly in their expertise in history, is the idea of, we talk about this, going back to go forward, and I'm someone who considers myself an inventor as well, and I have a lot of things I would like to make and bring to society, and one of the things that you have a lot of people who are these entrepreneurial spirits, or they're in your classes, and I want to do this and do that, and I want to make things happen, but one of the parts of creation is that you have to first understand how much has been created already.
Back to the future. Back to the future.
Well, it's just nuts. And the conversation is, we have a book right here, and Bernie said he wants to talk about Charles Lindbergh. So you talk about the airplane and the computers and all the things that have been created already. And what we want to do, especially in this conversation about history, is really kind of talk about how much has been developed and where we've come from.
Well,
and when we become more aware of that, then we will be able to really say, whoa, this is where we are in terms of, and then the world's spinning on its axis, right? Yeah. And then how can I use what's already in existence to create new things?
Well, with that, exactly what you're saying is 100% on page. Yeah. Because I'll just go a little bit on this. In 1885, the Director of Patents of the United States said, let's close the patent office. Everything that's been invented has been invented. Okay?
And then what year was this?
1885. So look how technology, he thought, well, everything's invented. He was thinking just in his own mind of technology that existed at that time. Never realized that there was a hell of a lot more technology to be developed. And when it comes down to it, history repeats itself. And now what you were talking about as far as taking old ideas and making them new is exactly the patent office calls innovations. So in other words, you found out that I had a patent on a device. Now, I had protection for 17 years, but you could also make an innovation. You could take an existing patent, it's legal, take an existing patent and make it a little different, a little better, and it's called an innovation. And so you could take all the technology and reuse it again. And what happened right now, if you go to, and it's exciting, you go to a website, look me up, Bernard Singoli, you'll find 3D imaging. You'll see that my early patent in 1985 is one of the base patents that are used right now in three-dimensional imaging. Matter of fact, the device that was shown a year or so ago, showing Michael Jackson After he died,
Oh, yeah.
it was not a hologram. It was 3-dimensional imaging, and it was one of the first patents was referenced to the Singoli patent. If you look it up, you'll find it. Okay.
Great. Yeah,
So
that was huge.
innovation, perfect. I'm glad you hit on that.
Yeah.
You know, unbeknownst to me, you were going to say that. But
Yeah.
that's where we're going. So most important thing, I think, from an educator standpoint, you should be looking at helping children understand what they can do in the future to make innovations, to come up with new ideas, so they can process in the progress in the 21st century. And I believe that today, and this is not taught in schools. It's not taught in college. Entrepreneurship is not taught in college, nor high school. I think courses like that should be applicable using technology, and people that do have some background is on entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a totally different world. Everybody says, I want to go into business, but they don't know what it entails to go into business. It's financial. It's many things that you have to go through to be able to develop a business. It's very difficult. I developed at least 4 or 5 businesses in my life, culminating with this crazy place. But because I like what I'm doing, and I wanted to get away from high tech, but you just can't get away from it. No matter what I do here today, it's high tech. So we call ourselves Pawndingo and Jersey Pawn. We call ourselves the pawnbrokers of the 21st century. We try to get into new technologies. We're trying to avoid older things, however, but what we learn from old technology helps us in the future endeavors that we are trying to accomplish. And I'd like to just have Justin talk a little more about what he sees the future as far as using technology, entrepreneurship, and how to motivate children that they can do something more. Because a lot of them are frustrated. They say, what am I going to do? There's no jobs. I can't find a job. I see people without jobs. I see college graduates without jobs. Well, you know what? If you really get down to it, if you want to do something for yourself, get out there and do it. And like I tell everybody, don't have people say to you, you can't do it. You can do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. To push you not to do it. They'll give you every excuse why you shouldn't do it, but do it, just do it. Let your heart and your mind follow your future. And if you continue, it comes down to what we talk about many times, PRP. I think I talked about that before. The principle of relentless pressure. You got to continue with that. You got to move on. You got to persevere. No matter how many times you fall down, you have to continue. And education, and I think everybody would agree today, I think Justin would also agree, education is power. Knowledge is power. Without it, you're going to be left in the dust. You got to move forward. So continue. And like I said, I got my basic knowledge of things in the early days when I was a teenager, the Encyclopedia Britannica. Even now, sometimes when I have nothing to do, and that's rare, I'll go to Google and I'll just think about it.
So yeah, just want to tie it back together, and like the students that you're teaching today and the younger kids, Wikipedia, the origin of that was Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right.
So all these things have their source. They have their source where they've started from, and what we're seeing with the internet and a lot of things online is the kind of digital manifestation of these things that actually were done, these physical processes. For instance, Bernie, when you created this device, right? This is something that
Not just this.
this device. When you created this device, the text sketch. So during the innovation process, what was it? You saw the Winky Dink show,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, "Oh wow, how could I make this happen?" And you kind of saw what it would be like, and you put the pieces together to make it happen.
So
I
it's funny. I advertised for people that could develop the software. I wasn't a software engineer, so I advertised to the newspaper at that time. We didn't have online. I advertised for people that liked video games and wanted to work their hobby. And you will be surprised how many people, young people especially, who came and said, I think I can do that. I like to develop stuff like that. I gave them the tools that were readily available at that time. I said, here's what I want. I came up with, in writing what I want. I want something that'll be able to work with this device and a computer and come up with different games. And we developed quite a few. But it all came from the basic knowledge and people that had the initiative to make it happen. It doesn't happen on your own. And I rewarded these guys. I gave them, incentives that if they developed certain things by certain guidelines, they would, and timelines I should say, they would be remunerated. And it worked out. And students today need that motivation. I mean, I talk to a lot, you probably talk to a lot too. I talk to a lot of young kids and they say, there's nothing out there. There's nothing I can do. I said, well, think about something that you like and see what you can do. Do it in your spare time. Don't expect to make money right away. Get a second job. Get a job and then work on it part-time until you get to a point you can move out of your garage. Just like Steve Jobs. Just like Bernie Singoli. I started my TV business in my father's basement. I started repairing TVs, at 13 years old. And they sent me everything under the sun that was broken. At that time, technology was tubes or whatever, different technology. I've gone from tubes to transistors, integrated circuits, to large-scale integration, small-scale integration, to nanotechnology. It's like unbelievable things that have manifested itself in my lifetime in a period of only 60-some-odd years. So, in the next 60 years, I would love to be here to see what happens. I think we're going to see things from education to technology that's going to be unbelievable. My father's dead 10 years now. He would fall over. He always liked what I was doing in my businesses, electronics and whatever. And he saw what's going on today. He would just fall over. Wouldn't believe they would have the devices. Phone like that? My God. It's unbelievable. An iPhone that displaced many industries. The camera industry, think about that. To GPS, to calculators, to whatever. I built a computer. Actually, I built a small little computer similar to the Apple I made by Jobs back in 1978 from a kit that came from Radio Shack. It didn't do anything. All you can do with it was basically play chess or checkers, or was an adding machine. There was no applications. Interesting.
And so going on with the Jersey Pawn Show, and the three main topics that we want to cover: people, place, and products. And Bernie touched on one of the things that we see here at the pawn shop that is educational, that a lot of people don't really get that understanding of how this technology changes value in society. For instance, we just talked about the GPS. We talked about it before, about how all of a sudden the iPhone comes out, the smartphones, and they have GPSs on them. Something that you think is, oh yeah, no big deal, until you try to go to sell it. And then all of a sudden it becomes obsolete that quickly. So that's kind of a knowledge that we have in the pawn shop, because we're kind of at the frontward facing part of the economy, where we see kind of how these industries, and it's not just a GPS, you're talking about companies, and companies have people in them. And all of a sudden, you're talking about stocks that are falling.
Companies go out of business. I mean, classic example is what happened to Kodak. They were one of the largest companies in the world making cameras and film. Well, digital photography came out, they were totally lost. And the funny story is that how some entrepreneurs and some business guys go by the numbers only. You gotta go by the numbers, but you also have to look outside the box. Back, I believe, in the early 70s, an engineer came to the chairman of Kodak and presented him with a primitive digital camera. The chairman of Kodak said, "Are you crazy? If we come out with something like this, that'll put us out of business. We sell billions in film, camera. Who's it? Go away." Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And another recent story, which everyone, people, our age can closely relate to, and I hope that this is another telling tale like Kodak, is Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, overnight, you have like Blockbusters. That was the thing to do. You went on, the weekends. You rented a film and you watched it, VHS tapes. And then what happened? It was DVD, then it was Netflix, and everything's digital now. And the company, if they even still exist, that would be shocking.
No,
they
felt the same way. They felt, we got something. Let's not change what we're doing. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. But they weren't looking towards technology. They were in the forefront. They could have easily moved from tapes to digital media, but they didn't do it.
Well, yeah, and then to tie this back into history, and Justin being a history teacher, is right. I think one of the things that we need to teach kids and just people in general in society, that's history.
Future.
It's history happening right now. And we'll talk about it in 5-10 years and reflect on it, and that's history now. But these things when they happen,
well, they're instantaneous now, and now with tweets, everyone in my school, all the kids, they use technology. They're on the phone, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat. All these devices that come out yet, and they're instant. Everything is, in America, it really comes down to, instant gratification. And you both have seen this instant, they want the highest price. They want the most money. Kids, they want all A's. How do I get an A? And, they want the best grade possible. And you have to figure out ways to innovate, educate. And, and you said before, reiterating on this, on computer literacy, today, everything that you do as a teacher is called state tests. For New Jersey, it's called a park. And you have to, prepare these kids to take a test on a computer the same way that you would take a test on paper. Now it's on a computer, and it's faster, it's more educated. And I will tell you a story about the first class I ever took in history. It was in college, and my professor said that you're going to the whole entire course, the whole entire semester, you will write me a 20-page paper, that is your grade. Go ahead and start typing. So I had no idea how to write, and this day I didn't really know how to use a computer real well. And I had to teach myself, and that's innovate. You had to become smarter than you know. If you don't know how to do something, how do you look it up? And that's how you tell the kids. And I know you mentioned before, Bernie, about how, don't anyone tell you no. I can tell this for probably both of you, the same story, how someone in your life has said no. Someone in whose life has said, you can't do it, you're not smart enough, you're not quick enough. Well, I'll tell you, and I tell this to my kids all the time, you can do it. The only one that can defend yourself, and I'm going to quote my mom because everyone always loves your mom, the only one that can defend yourself is you at the end of the day. So that's how I tell my kids that you have to speak up for yourself. And how do you do that? And that's innovation. You're with your pen here and be able to do that. That's innovation. Looking at different knowledge here, I know you really want to get into this book, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's The We by Charles Lindbergh.
Short story.
Yeah.
It's a little short story. I do love to get into that because as someone, for me, I love history, and I know a lot of my kids, and I try to get them to do it too, is that whatever they want to do, if they want to do art, how do I get them involved? How do I get them into that? And showing them the way, what colleges they want to look at, what courses they want to take, where is it located, the money around it, and that's a whole other day and a whole other situation about how to pay for it. And you mentioned getting the job. What are you going to do? Are you just going to be one of those people that, mom and dad are going to pay for it, or are you going to be like, for instance, what happened with me, where I had to go 2 nights a week, go to school and work 2 full-time jobs to pay for my master's, because I knew that at the end of the day, I wanted to do something. And if you want to do something in your life, and that's always what we want to tell the kids, you have to work hard. And that's exactly what you both did. You wouldn't be here, both of you, if you did not work hard and where you are today.
Absolutely. And I was listening very carefully to your story, and I think there's 2 value lessons. And one of the things we want to do at Jersey Pawn is we really want to disseminate value and morals to the story in our shows. And there's 2 lessons that Justin stated in his story. Was one of them is the idea of someone saying no to you and then saying figure it out. And when you kind of do something like that, then it gives someone to say watch how they do it, watch how they innovate. Watch the innovative, creative methods they use to figure this out. And that's really what people need is they need to say to people, no, figure it out. And then that'll give someone the initiative to take that drive. Another thing that you said in your story about how you had 20-page paper, you didn't really know how to use a computer. And another thing is that necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like you invented that by necessity, because you had to do that, And I'm sure that's what Bernie's done in his life, where he's had situations and he's had by necessity had to invent solutions. And really, it's just solutions in general. So one side of the story is when you have someone who works for you, or someone who a child, for example, you say to them, figure it out. And watch how they use their creativity. I think one of the things of creativity, which is very important in this next century, we're entering into this creative age. That's one of the characteristics of the 21st century. And constraints are very important to creativity. November Rain is one of the greatest songs ever created, right? What happened? Axl Rose locked himself in the recording studio and said, no, I have to finish this. 6 days. Pizza boxes everywhere. But then he produced that song. So it's very important, and I think this is kind of, I want to change the psychology of people in society. They get all negative, and they get very discouraged by these constraints and by the people who are telling them no, when really those constraints are helping you be creative. So it's really flipping the psychology around of saying, don't be discouraged. That is what's going to help you produce imagination, produce solutions, that are going to come from you. You got to do it all yourself.
Yeah, one thing I didn't mention is that besides teaching history, I also teach special education with it. And I'm dyslexic, and I tell the kids all the time that, you know, there is no cure for my learning disability. There's only accommodations and modifications that you will develop and overcome your obstacles. Everyone will have obstacles, and I tell them all the time that you're going to need to overcome. It's tough. It's not easy. This world is a dangerous place. You have to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your situation, and you have to know what you want. And that's a tough thing these days, is to know what you want. You can ask, you know, myself what I want to do. I always knew teaching was for me, and I guess this was our family teachers. Some people, I have kids where they have no idea, and I told them that, you know, you have a lifetime to figure it out, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to be too far behind on what is yours.
The only one caveat I want to mention here is, along with the creativity and wanting to move forward in the future, it's very important. Children should know that. But they also remember that sometimes along the way, you may have to take alternate moves in your career, because if it's not financially working out for you, you have to do alternate things, such as work part-time. I know they would want to put their efforts into what they're doing, but that doesn't put bread on the table all the time. So it's a combination. That's why they need mentoring. I think from a teacher standpoint, you need to mentor these children and what they should do and how they should go about it. They can't have goals that are unrealistic. However, unrealistic goal, the word is being overly optimistic. You can't be overly optimistic. You have to cut a blend between the two. If your dreams work out and they don't work out, there's a point in time, you can't dream forever. Everybody call me German. One last story I'll tell you before we move on as far as schools and teachers. I was in the 4th grade at here in Patterson. I think must have been about 9, I guess, at the 4th grade, 9, 10. And the teacher called my mother, and she said, Mrs. Singoli, Bernard is a lovely child. He's a beautiful child, but he's not in the class. He's somewhere out there. He's out there in a parking lot. It's true. Worked out to be true. I went home and let it beat the hell out of me. But my mind was going on things that I wanted. I was thinking about the TVs. I was thinking about what I'm going to do next. You know, deliver newspapers. I was a true entrepreneur as a kid. I always made money. I had more money in grammar school and high school than anybody else in the class. My parents gave me nothing. I just worked. I swept floors at a barbershop. I delivered newspapers. I can go on and on about this, but that's what it takes. It takes these children to understand that they got to work hard. You got to put in. It's the whole idea is garbage in, garbage out with computers. Effort in, you get an effort out. If you don't put an effort in, it's not going to happen. Just sitting there and think it's going to happen, it's not going to happen. Not in this world. You're going to move mountains. Sometimes you can put more energy in. Talking about the electronics business, power in, power out. There's always a loss in between. I mean, you're never going to have 100% efficiency, even in, say, a motor or something. It's not 100% efficient. No device is 100% efficient. But as a human being, you got to go and put a hell of a lot more effort in to see it on the back end and look forward to it. And that's what's got to really be. I mean, that's got to be used also in the education process. Can't all be optimistic, go peaches and cream. You got to show the downside and what they got to do to make it happen. That's really where it's at. So I'm happy to talk about this subject because it's close to my heart. My sister's an educator. My daughter's a special education teacher. I wanted to be a history teacher. But you know what? No disrespect. I'm glad I didn't.
It's not meant for everyone.
Wasn't meant. Well, it was meant for me, but then I wasn't able to do it because I had my mind on other things. But just in closing, we want to talk about one thing which ties together what we're talking about, education, that people should look, as we're saying here, as Keith was saying, the future. Something very interesting that we're trying to do here at Jersey Pawndingo Pawn Shop is to talk about things in the past, things from New Jersey. There's one little story that I want to tell you about a very interesting gentleman, Charles Lindbergh. Let's talk about it real quick. As everyone knows, he was the first solo pilot to cross the Atlantic in 1927. Many guys before him died because they went into the ocean and their machines didn't work. But the reason why he made it, as we said before, we're saying now, perseverance, continuous. They told him the same thing. Like his mother told him, not, get a job. My mother told me every week, get a real job. What are you doing? Get a real job. You're never going to get anywhere. So I said, okay, I'll get a job, but I'm also going to do what I got to do. So Lindbergh retires into New Jersey. His airplane, his engine was made at Wright's Aeronautical in New Jersey. The engine. You can see it in one of these pages here. I can't find it that quickly. Maybe you can find it. And a little story about that is that from the perseverance, he continued along and really created history, and he went on to make a lot of money as a pilot. And since it was made here in New Jersey, it's something about New Jersey. I want to make a segment, one of our shows, about that. Right, we'll go down to the Patterson Museum right here in Patterson. There is an engine, a similar engine to one that was in the Spirit of St. Louis. So it's quite interesting. Patterson, he recognized that Patterson was a very important part of his plane. And in 1927, after his flight back from Paris, he visited Patterson by flying over. And my father, who at that time was 8 years old, was in a schoolyard of School 18 in Patterson. And Lindbergh tipped his wings as gratitude to Patterson and to all the children in Patterson that believed in him. Unfortunately, he had some unfortunate situations with his son, which we can't go into right now. But yeah, there it is.
This is where you went?
Yeah, that's basically the plane as they built it. I don't know if you can see it. And he flew out of Long Island, landed in Paris, and the story is him and his plane and his cat, basically. If you want to read the book, it's available at libraries. It was published in 1928, and there's a movie you may not know. It's called, I think it's called Spirit of St. Louis, and it starred
Jimmy Stewart?
Jimmy Stewart, yes. Jimmy Stewart, yeah. Stewart. And he played the part, and he was the thin, tall guy, very similar to Lindbergh. So that's one thing we're going to talk about also. But also, we just want to say one more thing. We're doing our crowdfunding. We're looking to raise some money to do 6 new episodes. If you have the opportunity to look on your computer, go to www.jerseypawnshow.com. It'll tell you about our crowdfunding, which is becoming very popular out there. And just one last point. Black Friday, and every weekend thereafter at the Pawndingo Pawn Shop, Santa Claus will be here. Bring your children. We're going to have some small stocking stuffers for everyone, no purchase necessary. And we're going to continue our podcast, and we believe this is very important. Education is part of our heritage, part of our background here at Jersey Pawn. I think because we all have fairly good educations, we're able to do a lot of this. And we encourage everyone, every child out there that's in high school today, no matter what, if it's a money problem, find a way to get the money. You want to get motivated? Come and talk to me. I'll tell you what you got to do. You got to go to school. You got to learn. This is very important. Without knowledge, without education, you will not make it in this world. It's going to get terribly difficult in the future. So, again, as always, I'm Bernie, Pawndingo Pawn Shop, and the Jersey Pawn Reality Show. See you next time. Have a good one. Take care.